Your parents enrolled you in school here and you became a much brighter student than you were in Ethiopia, right? Let's talk about the education system, the dramatic difference in how you learned in Ethiopia versus how you learn here in America, and how did that impact you?
Going to school here, like even despite the language differences and me still like having to learn English, even despite that, I think um, it was the first time I started understanding what I was learning in class. Right. So the Ethiopian system, and I don't know how it is for like the other African countries, but a lot of it is just like teachers writing things on the board, saying it as they're writing it down, and you're supposed to copy that into your notebook. You have a test, right? It's like clockwork for every single class. That's mostly how it works. There are some teachers that might explain it more as they write it down, but that's basically what it is. There aren't much resources. There are barely like um, really articulate posters on the wall. We don't use different types of models. We're not watching videos, right? Um, Partly it could be resources, but also like the culture of teaching, right? It's sort of like if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't, right? Versus like the American school system, although it might differ by the school in the classroom. I think the American school system in general is trying to make sure that people actually understand what's going on coming here and in math class we're using like blocks to understand like 3-digit multiplication, right? We're like having to watch videos on our laptops to like understand how this thing in science works. So I think it's the first time I started understanding things and really it really hit me like um how much better people in the African context could do in terms of their educations and in terms of what they could innovate if they were able to have better school systems, right? So that was a lot of my experiences, like actually understanding what was going on because I was learning it in different ways. Because here they try to diversify their methods so that it sort of like gets at everyone, and it's not just whoever gets it that one way gets it. If not, that's too bad for you.
It feels like here learning is more tangible. Learning is something you can touch. It feels more. It's crazy that I've seen videos of like some remote part of Africa where a teacher's teaching students about computer and they literally have to draw the computer on the board to say these are the parts of the computer, but they actually did not have an actual computer to look at. And that's another opportunity for improvement back on the continent, talking about infrastructure and things like that. But here they're teaching you about something or a place. They organize a field trip. You all go there and see the thing in person. And that's one of the main attractions for America, coming to America for the education and how practical it can be, how it just opens your mind better to understand what you're learning. And then for uni, you considered a career in mental health, majored in psychology, and you switched from mental health to impact research and impact investing. How did that pivot happen?
I think it starts from actually when I moved to the US, right? So moving to the US and seeing how different the world can be for people simply because they were born in different parts of the world sort of like blew my mind, right? Like people's livelihoods um, in terms of like the basic needs were drastically different. So I thought about how much impact I wanted to have through my career because at that time I just saw my career as sort of like my tool to create the impact I wanted to create, right? So it might have been like maybe at 12, 13 years old, um, I thought, okay, maybe I can be a therapist. And the way I thought about that was sort of thinking about the different issue areas that affect the African context, the Ethiopian context. And I thought mental health care was the most neglected. Um, well, I would say evidence based mental health care was the most neglected, right? So in Ethiopia at that time, most people only knew of a single psychiatric hospital for the entire country. So people from all over the country would come there, and that's like if you are able to get in there, right? Um, so that was the only like thing people knew about. And I remember thinking, okay, like I want to work in that area because I see less people work on it versus other issues. I see more people work on it. So however many years later, I get to um, university, start majoring in psychology, and was really fascinated by like mental health care research. But I was also fascinated with research across different issues. So I was involved in different projects, sort of like trying to advance solutions in peace building, education, immigration. I was always really curious how impact could be made better, right? Because I think a lot of what I saw in the Ethiopian context was there were NGOs, there were charities, there were people trying to do good things. So a lot of intention, but it didn't seem to be moving the needle as much. So I was really curious about what is the context where we try to understand how we're actually having impact, instead of just like, oh, I want to do this thing and then you just do that thing, right? So, for example, I know a lot of people around me, including my family, that do this thing where they're celebrating something, so they pay a lot of money to make a lot of food and feed the homeless, right? And I started thinking about what if they could use that money to provide more sustainable solutions for these people.
Rather than a temporary one, like dinner for tonight.
Yes, yes, yes. So things like that, right? Like we don't actually try to think about what is most impactful. We just think about like, oh, what feels nice. So I was doing that, and I realized one, I was really interested in the variety of things, but two, I was interested in the impact research aspect, and three, I was interested in the money aspect of things. So when I was doing the mental health care research, a lot of it was like, okay, how can we promote evidence-based mental health care in the African context or in developing contexts where we don't have much money, right? And that made me really curious about where is the money in the world even going? Because there are resources, all types, right? But it's just not going for everybody that works for it. So that's sort of how I got into this space. Is I really became curious about, and now I work with mostly with investors, different types of funders, corporations trying to create strategy and do reporting for the impact they want to have out in the world. So that is the space I became interested in through the mental health care research.
That's amazing.